Okay, I'm going to do a patch with the 264 quad sample and hold and the 218, and basically using its polyphonic adapter section, I'm going to be able to play 4 notes on 4 different oscillators kind of at the same time, kind of. Um, as you may or may not know, the 218 from the music easel has just one kind of main pitch out, so it's like a monophonic output. But if we plug it into the polyphonic adapter, it's CV in, and there's a switch down here from separate to common that then kind of routes to the 4 different sample and hold sections. If we route it to common, it will then kind of with each note press, it's going to sample that note that I'm pressing, that voltage, go to one of the outputs, which is going to go to an oscillator, and then the next one is going to kind of pulse over to the next voice in line, sample that note, run it to that oscillator. So you can't press on like all the keys at once because you kind of have to go in, because you have to press in order. Like if I were to jam 2 notes at the same time, the 218 is not going to know which one was kind of pressed, and it's just going to choose one over the other. So when you kind of play like this, you have to I don't know. I guess I am not a keyboard player, so I'm sure there's like a right way to say this, but you kind of like arpeggiate into the notes instead of playing them all like at once in unison. You kind of have to play them one at a time. But with the way that I have these envelopes set up, so the kind of the full signal chain is the 218 going into the 264 sample and hold. The pulse output of the 218 is, we're going to get weirdly technical with this. It's first got to go into a 281 channel on the quad function generator because there's a bit of a lag when using the 218 and the 264. I've found it samples, the pulse will kind of sample before the note and CV value gets to the right pitch where it needs to go. So it kind of, when you use it, everything sounds a bit flat. By running into a 281 channel, I can then turn the attack up by maybe like 0.03, and then leave the decay all the way down, and that will delay that pulse. So when I press the key, it will reach that final pitch value that it wants to get to, and then it will pulse. That delayed pulse will then sample at like the correct CV value, then run it through the quad sample and hold. So everything will kind of sound relatively in tune. But then from the 264, from its pulse outputs, 4 are going to go into 4 envelope generators, and the voltage outputs are going to go into 4 oscillators. I'm using 2 oscillators from the dual oscillator 258, the complex side or the principal oscillator side of the 259, also using the complex side of the 208, basically because these all have wave shapers. You can go from sine to a either square or saw wave, and that takes a little bit more tweaking with the harmonic section on the 259 oscillator to do that. But with pretty short attack and longer decay times, I'm able to play 4 notes at a time. So that's just one CV source from the 218 playing those 4 notes in succession, then routes to those 4 oscillators. So their decays kind of overlap, so it still feels like they're kind of all being played at the same time. It's that voltage that's being held for that single note, and then once it's progressed through the 3 other voltage outputs or number of voices, it'll then kind of steal that first voltage and move on to the next one. So yeah, I've got a little bit of pressure kind of going into a bunch of CV processors. I'm also using the so combined with that pressure, running a bunch of random voltage from the 265 and the 165, and those are going into these CV processors, and then with the pressure, it'll randomly bring up the wave shaping on each of these oscillators, but it's kind of set to minimum. So if I play with really fat fingers, putting a lot of pressure on the 218, some of these notes will have their full kind of either square or saw wave sound, where some will be still in sine wave mode. Also a cool thing that I can do is I have the low frequency oscillator from the 259 complex waveform generator is going into the modulation input on the 264. So I'll turn that up a bit and play with that a little bit. So hear a little bit of modulation now. Just takes a little bit before it kind of gets into seasick. What I could do too, I've got this patch kind of running. Also, I can bring in some delayed filtered sounds into it. Sorry about that. By running the all output from the 292 low pass gate into the 296 programmable spectral processor, and then into the 277 delay. So you get these kind of sweeping filter delays. What I could do is turn on the arpeggiator section. So what's kind of cool is if you just hold down on one key, it's going to, and I have it probably the arpeggiator rate is probably like at a 5 or 6 on the 218, and because it's pulsing so fast, it's running through the number of voices on the 264 really fast. So you kind of get these, all 4 oscillators are being quickly triggered through to that single note. So we're kind of like playing it monophonically, but it takes a little bit of a second to catch up. So kind of adjusting my finger pressure. If I'm playing with my tips of my fingers, it's all kind of sine waves, but if I flatten my fingers out, a bit of the wave shaping comes in where you hear more timbres. And I'm playing, I think, 6 notes right now, where if I were just going to play 4, it would play the same note for every oscillator. So I'll do that right now. Let's play. And since I have these oscillators kind of spread out in the stereo field, 2 are hard panned left and right, and then 2 are kind of mid-side pan left and right. They keep kind of showing up in those same sections, but once you add an odd, so if I go down to 3, it's going notes. They're going to start showing up in different sections because it's 3 notes mixed up between 4 voices, so it's going to kind of start cycling. So if you play a lot more notes, they're going to jump around a bit. So yeah, I've, I don't know, maybe it's a bit basic to want to have kind of a polyphonic buchla, but it's definitely something that I've been excited about. I probably mentioned many times on this show how, jealous, or I don't know what the term is, but I'd love to get my hands on a 219, which basically took the polyphonic section, kind of the 264 in general, and put it into a keyboard that looks similar to like the 218, and yeah, just to be able to play chords with without having to like dial them up like on a sequencer and stuff like that is pretty fun. So. Yeah, very excited with this thing. Okay, I've got this very messy patch up on my system, and combined with the boat of uncertainty, and I'm not going to kind of go into every detail of what's going on. We're just going to focus mainly on what's happening with the 264 and the polyphonic adapter section. That's kind of making this, I don't know what to call this patch. It's kind of with its weird internal deviance in the number of voices, kind of like I would say maybe like a analog shift register type of patch. Kind of what I'm doing is taking a pitch information from the MARF, from the main CV out, using all 16 steps, and basically it's kind of most of the steps are set low, and then there's about 5 ascending steps that kind of go up throughout this sequence. And so I'm running the pulse output, the all pulse out from the MARF into the polyphonic input pulse. So it's going through those 4 voices, and the 4 voices are then going into the 259 complex waveform generator and the dual oscillator, the 258. And so I have the main CV coming into the polyphonic adapter, and that's set to common. And then I have the pulse outs for each voice. So as it goes through its lines, it's going to then send a pulse to an envelope, and those voices are then going into the quad low pass gate, and then onto the mixer. So yeah, it's kind of taking these 16 steps, running it to all of the voices, but because instead of we won't hear basically each voice playing the same steps every time that it's being triggered, because it probably won't show up on this video if you are watching the video much, but this is running at a pretty fast rate, but it will just kind of glitch out. It just doesn't go 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. It might do that 3 times, but then it might go 1 2 3 and then bends down to 1, and then so that's going to then shift this sequence that was kind of going through these 4 voices, and it starts it over. So then that oscillator is not necessarily going to be playing the same pattern each time. I have these 4 voices panned, kind of left to right. I'll turn on the, let's just turn on the one that's panned hard left. This is a Sawtooth wave coming from the 259. So you can hear that it's pulling from kind of different voices, or there's different notes each time. And so it's the same notes, but it's not super predictable. They kind of get jumbled around. And so as I add in the more voices, you'll hear how it kind of does that. And I'm kind of keeping this as a more bongo, shorter attack decay settings on the 281. So yeah, it kind of sounds percussive, but the pitch changes do come through too. Also, a reason why I have the attack and decay set so short is what we've kind of learned, and I actually talked with Dave Brown about this. I don't know if you're aware of his site, modularsynthesis.com, but yeah, he's got a great site that he's kind of seen most of all the clone modules that have come out, and helped build some or fix some, and takes amazing notes. And so he's got the same MEMS 264 as well. And so we've kind of been comparing notes, because I feel like we're the only 2 people that are really digging into this module at this point in time. And I found that if it keeps pulsing the same, if you keep sampling the same CV value, there tends to be a jump in periodically in what it's actually sampling. The voltage doesn't hold at that same setting each time. It will kind of jump up and down a bit. And he kind of goes into detail. He kind of figured out what the situation is with that. And so that's on his site. All that stuff tends to be quite a bit over my head, but it has to do with like a certain chip and its feedback kind of getting into the signal. And so if I open up, like, let's say this low pass gate a bit, you can hear those little variations in pitch. On top of its normal pitch changes. So I'll bring in the rest of the voices. So you hear a ton of drift between them all. Sometimes it's kind of subtle, and what I've actually found that's kind of fun is adding modulation to these. So I have complex oscillator on the music easel going into this, and it's kind of set in a low frequency sine wave position. So if I add some modulation, there's still that drift there, but it's kind of, it's a fun sound. You can slow down that modulation a bit. can bring that up quite a bit. I mean, that's definitely seasick. I have a module that maybe I'll talk about more in the future, kind of going between the low pass gate and the it's kind of like a CV processor and the 281, and so I've got it set up to where other portions of random from the boat of uncertainty are bringing in, are kind of basically turning up the low pass gate while it's also being pulsed by the 281. So if I set that up for the channels to kind of turn down that modulation a bit. Oh, I also got the all outputs from the 292 low pass gate going into the 277 signal delay unit, so I can bring in some delay lines, which sounds great. I've got the preset voltage source on the 218 from the music easel set up for different delay time lengths, so I can kind of bounce around between different delay patterns. Turn that modulation back down. So yeah, once again, kind of cool to, take one CV output, one sequence, but then route it to 4 different oscillators and get this much variety out of it. Or, it sounds like the same sequence over and over, but yeah, spread over these voices. I mean, I could pitch them differently and stuff, so we could even have them like put them in different octaves and stuff like that. We do have the offset. I mean, I have the set all the way down, but we could really, I can transpose everything there too. We could get nasty with it and start kind of like maybe adding FM to everything. Slow down the sequence. Open up the low pass gates a bit. Add more modulation. Maybe try to get rid of that. Turn the offset way up. I could turn up the repeats on the delay. The random is changed on the this CV processor, so now more of the percussive parts are coming through. So yeah, fun stuff.